Okay, it's 5 o'clock. Let's stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we start the official meeting tonight, just want to let you know, tonight is Milt's last official select board meeting.
I'll interpret that as
Was
a
not
positive.
expecting one.
Thanks for congratulating me.
Hey, we go for dinner after this.
Okay.
You've just redeemed yourself. So, one of the things last year at this time, we were, Roger and I were kind of navigating some pretty tough waters. And through administrative changes and otherwise, and then we had one of our selectmen resign. So it left us with an open seat on the select board. And Milt was gracious enough to step in, and of course with 6-7 years of select board experience as the zoning, in the zoning realm, in the planning board, the health officer, it really was a blessing to have him as part of our team. So Milt, we want to thank you with a gift. Thank you so much, and we really appreciate your help. We're going to miss you.
I will say that these two people were very easy to work with. They went through a tough storm last year at this time, as Carrie indicated. But also they have a great sense of humor. So it's important to have a sense of humor when you're a selectman, no matter what town it is. It's one of those positions. So thank you, and I appreciate being with you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Milt. So the next on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes. So we'll start with the one on January 24th, 2022. Any questions?
No, I make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Don't see anything in
Thank you. The next is the February 9th, 2022, and it's our Board of Selectmen work session. Any questions on that one?
No. Make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Good. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The next on the agenda is Vashon and Kluke are here to go over the 2020 audit with us.
Good evening. Thank you for having us on. My name is Corey Philbrick. For any of you that were not here a few months ago when we came up to present the 2019 audit results, I'm an audit manager with Vashon Kluke Company, and I'm the individual in charge of the town of Littleton's independent financial statement audit. I've been with Vashon Kluke about 10-11 years now. Time flies, and I've been involved with the town of Littleton's financial statement audit for approximately 5 years or so, both as a staff and then eventually the individual responsible for it. So a little bit of background with the town, albeit I'm sure not as much as some of you. We, as part of our audit, provide several different letters, which I believe the board has received draft copies of. I'm going to go over those at varying levels of detail, mostly because there's a lot of information in there, and to spend time to go through every bit of it, it's probably something none of you want to have to sit through. But if you do have any specific questions once I'm finished or in the middle of the presentation, by all means stop me, ask, we can discuss whatever you like. So the first letter that we provide is our governance letter. And the governance letter is a very kind of big picture overview of the audit process. Discusses some of our professional standards, the town's basis of accounting, and really just hits upon some big picture highlights. Of note, the town did not have any new accounting standards to adopt during the year. That's important to know in case you're looking at one year's financials versus the next. So there's some really good consistency between financials just in terms of any accounting standards that need to be taken into consideration. No transactions were undertaken during the year that lacked authoritative guidance. Just means that there was nothing sort of outside the realm of your typical accounting standards. All of the town's transactions were relatively standard from an accounting standpoint at least. Talks about significant estimates. And estimates are an important part of the financial statements because they're just that, they're estimates. They're subject to change depending on changes in circumstances. For the town, you've really got 4 major estimates that are coming into play. One of them is your estimate for uncollectible taxes. Obviously, the town levies taxes every year. You try to collect on that money. Some of those balances remain uncollected. And for any number of reasons, there may be difficulty in collecting on some of those. So the town estimates a portion that it doesn't anticipate being able to collect. Similarly, you have an allowance for estimated uncollectible receivables. This is mostly related to ambulance receivables, and just like taxes, you may or may not be able to collect on all of the outstanding balances. So you have an estimate for those. And then also capital assets, you're estimating your useful life. You may purchase a police cruiser, estimate that it's gonna last 3 years, and something may happen after a year and it gets totaled. You can't avoid these sorts of things, but you make your estimates on the most relevant information that you have. And then finally, pension and OPEB. These are both the New Hampshire retirement system, employee benefit liabilities, as well as the town's own single employer plan. There's a number of assumptions and estimates that go into those. And of the 4, those are the most subject to change, but thankfully they impact your budget process almost negligibly. So one of the other major areas that we discuss is significant difficulties throughout the audit. I'd say, the town, as you discussed, has gone through a rocky transition period over the last couple of years. It's relatively uncommon that we'd be presenting 2 years financial statements back to back in less than 6 months' time. But here we are, and for anybody that's interested, the schedule for the 2021 audit is much sooner than it has been since I've been involved with the audit process even. Within the next couple months, we'll be working on the 2021 audit. That's really where you want to be. And if all things go according to plan, the town will be caught up with their audit process at that point. And then hopefully the goal is to just continue on with that process. So no significant difficulties in getting the 2020 audit wrapped up. Thank you to Lori for working with us to get us answers to any questions that we had or document requests, those sorts of things that come up during the course of the audit. So then, moving on from there, is really the bulk of our financial statement audit, or what it focuses on, and that's the financial statements themselves. The town of Littleton does have an unmodified opinion on its financial statements across all opinion units. And essentially, when you hear unmodified opinion, the phrase clean opinion is often used. What that essentially means is that the town's financials are presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Or US GAAP is the abbreviation for it. What that means is that they're fairly presented in all material respects. And that really gives you a sense that when looking at those financial statements, they contain decision useful information. You have an ability to rely on them. You can place a certain level of reliance upon them. There's comparability with those and any other financial statements of another municipality that's also presented in accordance with US GAAP. So that's really the most important takeaway as far as our opinion on the financial statements themselves. Some just key takeaways from the financials. The general fund balance decreased during 2020 by approximately $294,000. That can be attributable to a number of different factors, even intentional factors. When you talk about using fund balance to reduce taxes, that's going to have an impact of reducing your total fund balance at the end of the year. The general fund's ending fund balance for 2020 was about $2.2 million. The largest portion of that, which is about $1.3 million, is really a combination of the library funds, which are restricted for use towards the library, and some unspent bond proceeds that the town's been carrying forward over time, about $300,000 of it in bond proceeds. The next largest component of fund balance is committed fund balance, and in that you have a combination of your expendable trust funds, as well as some non-lapsing appropriations. So those would be special warrant articles that were approved in past years, that the projects are just still ongoing. So you still have that authority to spend, you've already raised the money, and now you have it, and you need to spend it now. And that's roughly $600,000 combined. It's a pretty even split between the two. One thing that you will notice towards the back of the financials in the RSI, where there's a budget to actual comparison, and that just shows where the town sort of fell in terms of its estimated revenues versus actual revenues, as well as actual appropriations versus what the town expended. And in that, you'll notice that there was a statutory overdraft of appropriation, which basically means that the bottom line budget was overspent by about $150,000 for FY20. The biggest contributing factor to that, and I'll get into this in a moment, was related to debt management. Just the town had a couple special warrant articles. They were approved to be funded through debt. Normally that would give you revenues and expenses. You're getting debt proceeds, you're spending the money. And for whatever the background reason may have been, the debt wasn't executed, the assets were purchased, and as a result, you've got the spending, but you don't have the money coming in. And when that happens, it ends up having a negative budget impact. So there was almost $500,000 in asset purchases that should have been funded from debt. And actually, another piece that you'll notice in the notes to the financials, subsequent to year end, so it's not actually recorded in the financials, but it did occur in 2021. Debt was issued to ultimately fund those, so that does actually help your bottom line because now you finally have those revenues coming in, helps fund balance, kind of restores some of it. So then, the next two documents are our internal control letter and our letter of management recommendations. When we conduct our audit, we use a risk-based audit approach. Generally accepted auditing standards really calls for a risk-based approach, and over the last 10 years or so, as the audit industry has transitioned to that method, it's really worked out well because when we're planning an audit, we do a number of different things. We'll test a wide range of transactions related to your internal controls. So what sort of processes do you have over your financial transactions? How do you approve vendor payments? How do you document your payroll transactions, for example? We'll use that information to help us then further develop our audit procedures so that we can really kind of focus in on your more high-risk areas and not spend as much time, aka money, on less risky areas. Some of the other things that we'll look at because of just their very nature of carrying risk is credit card purchases. We look at credit card purchases from a sense of, is it reasonable, as well as was it properly documented and properly approved. Credit cards, just because of their nature, or bank cards rather, tend to be the highest risk because whoever has them has the authority to basically approve whatever they're buying. So we look at those sorts of things. So through the course of our evaluation of risk, our testing of controls, we did know a number of matters that were communicated in those internal control letters. The majority of them were repeats from 2019. And that was really kind of expected going in. We didn't start the 2019 audit until the beginning of 2021. So regardless of what we found during that 2019 audit, there was no way to fix those problems in 2020. And that's why going in, we kind of knew that we were going to see a lot of the same things. Anybody that was here for the meeting, we kind of went into great detail in those items. Really, they related to just the general ledger maintenance, cash reconciliation process, credit card transactions, having supporting documentation, project management, and debt management, like I was just discussing with the borrowing issue. The one new finding that we did have for 2020 related to payroll, and through the testing of a number of payroll transactions, what we ended up noting was that the town wasn't in compliance with a variety of different documentation standards that are required both by the state of New Hampshire as well as just federal labor law, Fair Labor Standards Act. And these related to documenting rates of pay. Anytime you have a rate of pay, it should be signed by the employee, documenting time worked, documenting approval of those items, and the computation of wages paid based on that supporting documentation. So really, our big takeaway with that and our recommendation there is to review policies and procedures around those documentation standards and requirements. Obviously, you leave yourself open for wage claims over or underpaying employees, could go both ways, as well as in the reporting of your payroll-related withholdings, liabilities, and obligations. And those, when you talk about sort of the largest potential ramifications, is where the greatest risk lies. Wage claims specifically, and then also in your reporting of anything related to federal income tax, New Hampshire retirement system benefits. When you don't have things calculated properly, or, we did notice a number of payroll transactions that were processed through more of the accounts payable methodology, using manual checks as opposed to running it through the actual payroll system. It's not always going to properly calculate because you're relying on somebody's manual calculation, and that's assuming that they remember to do that calculation as far as calculating withholdings. Obviously our recommendation there would be to go through, review any past, from 2020, potentially evaluate, regardless of time period, you want to review to make sure that those calculations are being done properly, and if anything needs to be revised, then that should be considered as well. So that's, like I said, there's several other internal control matters discussed, as well as the management recommendations, but those were repeats from 2019. I can go over them again if you'd like. If you have any questions on them, I can answer those, or if you have any questions on the financials as a whole, I'd be happy to discuss.
When you were here last time, the question I asked you at the end of your presentation was whether or not we needed to have a forensic audit.
Mm-hmm.
And you said no, and you gave some good reasons, so I'm not going to ask that question again.
Sure.
But I do have a few questions on your worksheets, if I could ask you.
Yeah.
If these are outliers, or if this is kind of like what you see with most audits.
Sure.
The material audit adjustments, one-page summary, I think, we went through. So in general fund, I'll just give an example. To adjust deferred inflow for uncollected property taxes and reduce property tax revenues by $154,302.
Yep.
You had 10 of those. And it came to a total of $1,851,558 that were either adjusted, moved, acknowledged, recognized, whatever the wording was you used in each of the sentences.
Mm-hmm.
So given the size of the 2020 budget, having to adjust $1,851,000 plus, is that an outlier, or is that?
It's a difficult question to answer, and the reason that I say that is that it depends on the nature of the adjustments. As we indicate in our material weakness on general ledger maintenance, just from our review of the financial records, it was clear to see that there was a lot of large adjustments needing to be made throughout the year to keep the financial records sort of presented reasonably, and in certain cases, those adjustments were occurring several months subsequent to the period that they were actually applicable to. So, right off the bat, that tells you that the information that you're relying on a moment-to-moment basis may not carry the greatest value. And that's why we have that material weakness in there. So, in that sense, no, it's not something you would typically expect to see or want to see. As far as the overall volume or numerical value, that's where it gets a little bit more difficult, because you could have a single audit adjustment because of how somebody viewed a transaction that's $1 million. Some of these audit adjustments are not adjustments that we would expect most municipalities to make on their own. The example that you gave on the deferred inflow for uncollected taxes is a perfect example of that. That particular adjustment has to do with a difference between what GAAP requires for external financial reporting versus how more or less every municipality in the state reports internally. It's a material adjustment. It needs to be made for your financial statements to be fairly presented, but it's never something that I would be more surprised if a town made it on their own versus waiting for their audit to have that adjustment made. Some of the other adjustments are somewhat mirror images of each other. When you see an adjustment discussed in the general fund area that talks about revenues and expenditures needing to be reallocated from the capital project fund or grants fund over to the general fund, you're going to see an offsetting adjustment in that other fund in most cases. And that kind of speaks back to one of the topics that we talked about in our previous presentation, as far as, was information missing? Throughout our audit procedures, we didn't detect anything that was missing per se. It was more so that things weren't in the right place. They were there, they just needed to be taken from this fund and moved to that fund, or reported as an expenditure as opposed to a receivable, more classification and allocation type issues over actual completeness or non-existent type issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
The other question I have is, it's the report on internal control based on audit of basic financial statements.
Yep.
And I'm asking this question within the context of pressure put on this board to have a performance audit completed. And I have a specific question I want to ask you at the end, but.
Okay.
So general ledger maintenance, there was observations, there were implications, there were recommendations.
Yep.
Cash reconciliation process, payroll, project management, and then you had under debt management, you had debt management and then credit card purchases. 6 categories, 16 recommendations. Each of those sections had a recommendation section in it, or a subsection.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, do the above 16 recommendations constitute the components that make up a performance audit? Because it sure sounds like it does.
I can completely understand why that may be interpreted that way, just because of the breadth of what our recommendations.
Well, I viewed it as a
constituted.
positive. I mean, I thought these recommendations were quite good. So if we followed each of these sections, we wouldn't necessarily have to go out and hire somebody to do a performance audit.
Right, and by performance audit, you're referring to more of like a forensic type audit.
No, I think the way it's been described to us is from the time a budgeted item is triggered. In other words, you buy something,
Mm-hmm.
and then it comes back and it flows through the process, through all the different departments. And then it accumulates, and then there are reports written. What we suffered from here was a time lag that was not unexplainable, but not ever acceptable.
Gotcha.
Being this far behind on getting reports done for the end of the year. So in looking at each of these sections, you wrote very clear recommendations on how to avoid the sort of issues that you found. If you put those all together into 10 paragraphs,
I
do you have
think I see where you're getting
the
at.
plan?
Right, almost like a process audit,
Right.
where you're coming in and auditing your
That's right.
processes. So it's important that I make the distinction between an audit of the financial statements versus an audit of the internal controls. We don't audit the internal controls, although I can completely see why it looks like that's what happened. Because we have to involve risk assessment with our audit process. That's really where a lot of these kind of tests come from. Our intent coming into the audit isn't necessarily to tell you how to do things. But if things come to our attention throughout the course of the audit, we do need to bring them to your attention. And that's really what the purpose of this was. I think some of the biggest takeaways are very much procedural. Making sure that things are being properly documented, properly approved, reconciled in a timely manner. And those items are very much a cornerstone to an effective internal control system. Is there a large amount of room for improvement simply by implementing these recommendations? Absolutely, but it's not as comprehensive as it would be were we coming in with the explicit purpose of truly auditing your internal control structure as opposed to auditing the financial figures.
Right. Okay, thank
So,
you.
it may serve your purpose. I just don't want to confuse the two, just because it's a different objective.
Thank you. So I have.
No, I'm all set, I've got the answers that I need, so.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And we are expecting a much different 2021 audit.
Yeah,
We are.
I think it's been a lot of work to get to the point that the town's at. You pretty much had 3 audits back to back to back in less than a year and a half span. And now you'd be going into just about the 4th. So, but this one's definitely on schedule much earlier. I mean, we'll be we'll be starting it almost 6 months earlier than we were starting the 2020 audit. And you know, if everything goes according to plan, should be back here at some time late summer, early fall, and you know, 2021 will be put to rest in about where you expect it to be.
Great. We want to give Lori and Jim a big thank you too.
Yes.
It was a lot of work. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, don't you have a public comment on this?
Sure, Rudy.
Okay. As an auditor, do you have an obligation that which is written, you know, your bylaws, whatever you use, right, you know, to make sure that when you receive the budget of the town, at the time it goes overboard, you as an auditor, do you have an obligation to make sure that things, you know, they are done properly according to your audit and they don't go overboard? Do you have an obligation on this, yes or no?
I don't quite,
You don't understand?
I don't understand the question, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No obligation to make sure that the board doesn't overstep its bounds, is that?
Yeah, you say that you have a financial obligation towards this town because you do the audit, all right? When you receive a paperwork from the town, how much they spend and stuff like that, and let's just to say you audit, you see that they go overboard,
Yep.
more than how much.
Sorry, I don't know what song this is.
Thank you. You know,
That was
and you see that what they spend, it goes above what you got in your paperwork.
Mhm.
Do you have an obligation to tell the town, to tell the office of the town that they went aboard, you know?
So, when we come in to do the audit,
Yeah.
the year's done.
Yeah.
So, we have no way of knowing in advance if the town had ever overexpended its budget. As far as the obligation to report on it, that's actually in the financial statements, it's towards the back. I can give you the page number. Yep. Page number 46 talks about stewardship, compliance, and accountability, where it references the town overexpending its budget.
Yes.
Yep.
What,
So that's where it would be reported.
and what's your job? What do you do? You just tell them, say, hey, you cannot give, you know, $500,000 to this particular entity because
Well,
the figure that I did,
yep.
you don't have that $500,000. What are you gonna do? You're gonna raise the taxes and stuff like that too?
When we audit the financial information of the town. We have no ability to, as independent auditors, we're just that, we're independent. We don't have any ability to direct the town governance or management how they have to do things. We can make recommendations as far as best practices.
Yeah.
And what we would recommend, but we can't stop them from doing anything. We report on it, you know, and that's really where our powers.
Expertise, no
And-
power, expertise.
Right, well, as we apply our expertise throughout the course of the audit, professional judgment when we're reviewing transactions for reasonableness. You know, in this particular case, when we talk about the debt issuance being one of the big causes for, you know, the overexpending on the budget, we report on that in a couple different areas. Our recommendation on debt management as an example, you know, and in addition to the actual financial disclosure on the overexpending of the budget, I mean, that's really where it's being covered. You know, what things happen beyond that, that's completely out of our control.
That's because you go behind in the year. It's like 2022, you don't know what's going on in 2022 because you audit, it's 2019, 2020.
Right, in these cases, yes, and even in the best
And
case.
when the time they gotta pay you to do something about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when we already know.
Yeah.
We know what they spent in 2019.
And part of that is just state law. State law requires that towns have an annual financial statement audit. So if a town happens to fall behind, while you're right, there may be less benefit to
Definitely.
going through the audit process, that lack of benefit or perceived benefit, real or otherwise, doesn't excuse the town from its obligations under state law to have an audit done. So that's why they still need to go through the process, because state law says that you have to go through it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions, comments? Good. Thank you, Corey. We look forward to see you late summer.
All right, take care.
Easier job.
Yeah. The next on the agenda is Sonia Bartlett is here from, and she's gonna share with us her organization, Artisans with a Mission, regarding the homeless situation we have in the area. So Sonia, you're on.
Hi there. So I lived here, grew up here. I moved away 22 years ago, and in those 22 years I lived in Savannah, Georgia, and that's where I began to do a lot of ministry work and working with the homeless. It was like that for 10 solid years, mostly in working with the church that I belong to and working with organizations within the city and getting people off the streets. My heart was the one-on-one out there talking to them, trying to find the resources and getting them from A to B. I come from a faith-based background in all of this because I saw the results of what happened with people. I even went to Nashville for 3 years and lived there and worked with the homeless organizations there. When I say organizations, I say they are faith-based, but they are groups that have designed something to help the homeless community. So in the last 10 years, I've been raising awareness to stop human trafficking of children with my music and art. That's where Artisans with a Mission came from, and it was how do I say it? The statement is bringing change for children. So my desire was to be able to be someone that would gather community, network, whatever it is, organizations, people's churches, whatever, for a good cause, and that as artisans and musicians we would perform, and then proceeds would be used to go towards whatever cause that we picked. So I had to move back last January, not intending to, but I'm very blessed to be back here, very thankful. And so I wanted to continue what I was doing. I drove Uber for 4 years down there, and that's how I worked with people in the streets, because they rode in my cabs and they needed a ride, and I would be able to connect the dots with them. I also had the opportunity to speak with people internationally. Savannah is a well-known city for International Arts College, and speak to a lot of people about the cause. I say all this because I'm really here because of my history in dealing with helping the homeless and the things that I've seen that have worked, and my heart's desire to see possibly a committee or a group of people, maybe even an organization who already has that passion or vision, and to be able to help them to pull something together to help the homeless step up. And that's basically the next part of what I worked with them. I went in and I ministered with my music and art. It's basically talking to them positively and sharing with them my faith and how it helped me out of my own stuff, and being an overcomer years ago in different things in life. But also too, it was an opportunity to see people's lives transform and change. These people involved addiction, they involved prostitution, they involved crack houses, they involved inner city ministry, runaways. When I went to Nashville, I traveled to different cities from there: Branson, Missouri, San Antonio, Texas, Buffalo, New York, Virginia. I worked with different ministries in those for the same cause. Mine, to stop human trafficking of children, theirs, the homeless. So I'm not saying that they connect, but I am saying that it does put children at risk. So my heart, of course, is the children. The fundraising that I want to do through the art and music events, will be, the money will be used to go towards that. Whether it be, say, an organization is already starting all of that up, and I'm just a part of giving that, giving to that. I do have musicians, I do have vendors and artisans in place. I do have a place reserved for September 24th. So some of these things are already in action because my heart's desire was, how can I help even if it's just one family with children? When I came here, I needed work. I started driving for ride here and taxi. And in that, a good percentage, I have to say 80% of the people probably that ride in my taxi are homeless or in a desperate circumstance. And so in that, it came back up again. And I'm like, how can I help? How can I help? And so I have spoke with organizations. One, I definitely spoke to Stanley, who I spoke to him probably like 3 times about an organization called Bridge Builders. And of course, Pastor here, I spoke with him as well. My passion for the safety of children, it's a wide variety. What I saw with the homeless here, and I love the way the town handles it and puts them into a place to live, but then there comes a place where they've got to be educated, or they've got to be, I call it poverty mentality, where they've got to learn. So those learning things can be finances, they can be how to get up and out of being off the system and being out of the town paying, for them to be in a hotel and have their own home. And there's many reasons why they're there. I mean, I could go into all of them. Right now, I'm helping a gentleman who, his girlfriend and their 2 children, and he is in the motel because they have split because of the circumstance and the pressure, and she is in an Airbnb with her 2 children, and they are just getting by. And they are very overwhelmed, and homelessness is not a respect of persons, as we see with disasters that can come into an area and put people homeless and put children at risk of being lost and people struggling mentally. COVID is not our friend. We know that, and that's been a huge circumstance. And it's people that they're in such fear, or they're in a circumstance that they don't know how to get out. I'm not saying there's not opportunities. I'm not saying there's not provision. I'm saying someone there to have a relationship with them to really find out what the issue is that's keeping them stuck. So, I did do research throughout the town because I didn't want to come in here trying to say I'm the know-all, because I'm not, and I know you know that. But I talked with Tri-County CAP, Kim, who is the director for Grafton County, and they are in desperate need of case managers for Bethlehem and Littleton area. And she has some concerns too on her part, as well as the lady who helps to get the people into the hotels. And so I think COVID has really taken a lot of attention on everything. So hopefully that's starting to shift. And then, my desire is, I don't have a problem with the networking and getting the people there at the meetings and helping. I feel like sometimes I find that when you're get involved with the community and you start to know people, you see there's people that already have that passion, heart, and vision, maybe even already established, but they needed, maybe they needed fundraising, or maybe they needed someone that would say something. I don't know.
So
Yes.
Sonia, would you be willing to share your contact information then?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, so if you could do and I hate to cut you short, it's just
No.
that we have so many other things
That's okay.
to go over tonight.
And that's what I was just about to say.
Okay.
So I did I wrote up on a letter and introduced my event that I'm doing, not because I want people to go, but so they could see
Okay.
what I'm all about with social media. And I also put at the end of it the 7 places that I worked strongly with that, of course, these are bigger cities. This is, newspaper, worked in a pregnancy shelter as a house manager, helping to start a thrift store. You know, there was so much more to it, but I listed it on there so people can go to the links and check it out.
So you've got the handouts with you?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
So do
Okay.
you want to just leave
Yes.
those here for us? And
Yes.
then as people would like to,
Yes.
or should maybe you just hand them out or? you
I
can take one or-
copied 10.
Okay,
Because there was the letter and the handout, so whoever really wants them, and if anybody else who didn't get one, there's not enough, then I can always give you my email, or my email's on here, and you can
Okay.
contact me and I can email it to you.
all right.
Because I knew it was a lot of, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, good?
Do you guys want to say anything to add to it, or?
We just wanted to mainly, support Sonia here, what she has to say, but also to see if we can't network with other organizations that may not be doing work together. And I think having a centralized location to begin that process, because everybody's got a little piece of the pie, let's put it all together in one place.
Good, super. That's great. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you. And especially with, it's no surprise, the welfare budget was up, over 300,000 this past year. So there's definitely situation there. So thank you for your heart in that too. It's awesome.
We could go back.
Okay.
We need a motion to accept the audit.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, just before we do that, though, is it, just maybe any quick questions directed towards Sonia? Harry?
Hi, my name is Harry Daisy. I've been paying homeless for the last 7 months, and I've seen a lot of abuse and neglect here in Littleton, New Hampshire, at several hotels. One hotel, without saying any names, lost all their funding for abuse and neglect. And now we have another hotel that's doing the same thing. For the last 5 months, I've asked Governor Sununu and other organizations to pitch in the $2 million that we need here to run a safe house for the people here. We have a serious problem here in Littleton, New Hampshire for abuse and neglect. So as one person, I've been running around my head cut off on Monday through Saturdays, trying to get all the funding to come up. And I'm trying to open up the eyes of Littleton, New Hampshire, because I've been talking to investors at the hotels for sale here next to the East Gate, and I've been trying to open it up as a homeless shelter.
Okay, good, well, thank you. It sounds like you and Sonia definitely ought to connect. That's good. Thank you. Thank you, Harry.
I'm just here to try to open it up and see what we can do. I guess I got a lot of things I got to do with the town before we can do anything, but I do have a lot of investors, ARP, Governor Sununu's office, all these programs that are 20 per one. There's a lot of money here, free money, to open up a nice shelter for the safety of the people that want to be here.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. So we do have to jump back in the audit. We have to approve the,
So I can make a motion that we approve the audit?
okay?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good, thank you. Thanks for keeping us between the guardrails. Okay, so the next on the agenda is the administrative. So the Board of Selectmen, I'm assuming the meeting next week?
Yeah, our next meeting is the 14th. I was just gonna say that I'm gonna be out of town, but I can call in. But as of right now, we don't have anything on
Okay,
the agenda, so we can monitor that as we go. I mean,
okay.
I don't know, I was asking Judy today on how you do after elections, if there's a specific time when people get sworn in. and-
We
and
do.
Yeah.
We do have to meet right away after the elections in order for the slate of officers and
Okay.
swearing in.
Yeah, she was telling me like there was like a period of time during the week that it went on based on counts and quotes and what have you with
Yeah.
that. And so I didn't know then if that was done like at your meeting, like on the 14th. you
It
know,
would be to vote for chair, vice chair,
and swear
and the
in,
and town,
and
town,
swear the town moderator and swear in a new board of selectmen.
yeah. So, and you would be the one that would start that off.
Okay,
So I think we probably ought to look at a different date.
okay, okay.
All right,
okay, yeah.
so
I
maybe
mean, there's no reason why it couldn't be during that week if there's not a close call or a question in reference to number of ballots, I think, which could
Okay.
dictate count time.
So we could shoot for the next Board of Selectmen's meeting to be March 21st. You'll be back.
Oh, yeah,
then,
yeah,
okay.
I'm going on Saturday the 12th and coming back on the 19th,
Okay,
Saturday.
All right. So assuming, yeah, okay, let's shoot for that.
Okay, or if need be involving the swearing in process because of the changes, I mean, possibly the end of next week, if
Okay,
it could work, but,
as long as it's after the 8th,
Yeah.
so,
Swearing in is done by the clerk, or it can be done by.
yeah, I mean, I checked that because, I mean, not into anything, but you could have a new clerk, so the clerk has to be sworn in.
That's
I mean,
correct.
meaning, so they're,
yeah.
so, yeah, so I,
Looks to me you're gonna have to cancel your vacation.
well, wouldn't mind staying
You
for
don't
another
trust
week,
the
so.
selectmen, you don't trust the selectmen to have a meeting without you?
No, I can call in on the 14th, but it was what Judy had given me in reference to, that, yeah, you all are in a position to, swear folks in if need be, and I just didn't know then if that would fall on that 14th.
Well,
or we could do that
why don't we
before.
just leave it the 14th
And
then?
then you.
Right,
Yeah,
we can
okay,
get you on the phone.
Yeah.
yeah, all right,
Yeah.
let's.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll call in, no problem with that, and if we have anything else on the agenda, then we'll put it on like a normal meeting
Okay.
and go forward, all right?
Okay, good,
Okay.
thank you.
Then we already got that set, all right?
All right, then the next on the agenda is the wastewater treatment plant.
Yes, I've given you a timeline we got last week. We signed the contract with the contractor on Wednesday the 23rd. And based on their timeline, the job should be completed by June 27th, 29th. Again, on delivery dates, which have already been extended, but so the first screw pump should be coming in almost any day. And for the plant, and then the second one will follow. The only thing we had them do is we did have a failure in the bar rack and the screen system, which takes all the rags, diapers, and other big items that people have a tendency to flush down. And since the day I found out about it was the day that the contractor was in, so we had an opportunity, and they left the meeting and went down there, and so they've got a Band-Aid solution that's
Okay.
already in place for us, because it was the bar rack and the screen was at the end of the process. But being able to get something fabricated and whatever now, they've got us up and running, and that'll hold us through until the new one gets installed. So this just gives you the timeline then on those emergency repairs.
I have a couple
Yes, sir.
questions. I thought there'd be somebody here from the company, but maybe you can just transfer it. So this is a critical path project modeling example. So it runs it all the way from February through June 29th. And these events, there are three components to this plan. There are the activities, there are the events, which are the start dates and the end dates, and then there's a section called constraints. And here's the question that I have. Jim, as you know, on some of these items, they go on for 14 days, which include weekends. So is the implication, or is it implied that they'll be working weekends?
No, in the contract, there are specific times they can't
Okay.
work, holidays, Sundays, and, that aspect. And I think the contingency is built in terms of like weather delays and things like that, gives them, but the restrictions that you have in place already involving construction and stuff on weekends and all, those aren't superseded.
So the field activities start as of March 7th, and they run through to 6/29. That's 77 days. If you take out all of the weekends, it comes down to 50 days. Some of the items have 1 day. The biggest one has 14 days. Another one has 13 days. So we've got the activities, we've got the events, the schedule. And I guess my question to them would be, what keeps you up at night about meeting it by the 29th? We've got supply issues that could come up, we've got labor issues that could come up, we've got weather that could come up. So knowing that they've done this kind of work before in other towns, and they've seen our building down there and the process, so what are they anticipating that would throw this schedule off, if anything?
One would be as if there wasn't delivery of the screw pumps, which had been confirmed. So that would be the only issue. Other than that, they're ready to mobilize. I mean, they don't have an issue with workforce. They've got their own force. They've done these before. In terms of there is a factor built into the contract that if they exceed these dates and it's no fault of ours, then there's a financial penalty to them. So there's an incentive for them to keep to the contract.
Oh, understood.
Yeah. What keeps me up at night was the fact that one pump's broken and the other is probably on the verge, but we have backup redundancy now, both with a diesel pump and an electric pump. And if we have to hang on to them for a couple of months and to ensure that we never have a complete failure out there, that's the issue that concerns me.
Yeah.
I'm pleased to see that we've got firm dates in line to know that hopefully at the end of June, not that we won't have the plant to worry about, there are other repairs and things, there's a warrant article
Right.
for them out there, but it needs some serious work.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
once the first pump arrives and it gets installed, instead of running on a half-worn pump, we're running on a good pump.
Right, understood.
Which will take us out of the woodwork for any major problems that should come along.
Right.
So I just wanted you guys to have an update on
Yep.
the timeline.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay. The next on the agenda, and we don't have to vote on anything of that, do we?
No, no.
Next on the agenda is another administrative, it's under old business, the Ammonoosuc River Local Advisory Committee.
Yeah,
Did we have anybody?
no, nobody's applied, it's just that we got more information, we put it on the website
Okay.
and gotten out, I think, Vic, did we send it information to them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was part of the last batch. I've gotten a little bit of new information. They've given me, which is more about what they're looking for, and they've also given me the applications for anybody who wants to be nominated to be part of the board.
Okay.
So I've got that. If you guys know anybody, send them my way, or I can email it to them.
And we've got to fill the 2 positions, correct?
They wanted at least 2, yep.
Okay, all right. So,
I mean, while it was tabled, I mean, we'll keep it ongoing
Okay.
until we get applications,
All
or
right.
maybe you run into somebody in the community, somebody's got an environmental cause, or is that something that they want to be involved in, involving the river?
okay,
Okay?
all right, that's good. Thank you.
All right.
So next is the fire department, the EMS advisory committee.
Yes. Chief? Yep.
Before you, you should have just a list of the general items that I put on as the objectives for the committee and kind of, if you will, an outline for what was considered for membership or being on the committee. The only thing that I left blank on that was for how many people you were looking to appoint. I didn't know if it was 3 or 5, but that's kind of on there as a guiding thing for you, and just looking for feedback from you as to what you're looking for, if there's anything else on there, or
I had a couple recommended changes to the wording.
Yep.
If I could just go through that quickly.
absolutely.
So the paragraphs are good, and the way you broke it out, the format is fine. But I added the word municipal to emergency medical services, because we're talking specifically about the service that's attached to the fire department. So to act as an advisory body to the BOS in the interest, BOS meaning Board of Selectmen, in the interest of enhancing and sustaining financially viable municipal emergency medical services in the town of Littleton and in the Littleton Regional Healthcare. I've got a copy.
Okay.
Catchment area. And then what I did, I broke the next paragraph, I broke it into what under responsibilities. So it's, the committee's focus is on the financial aspects of system operations and its tasked to make recommendations for collecting, analysis, and dissemination of EMS-related revenue and cost data. And I put a recommendation in here which you can basically throw out and change it to whatever you want it. The cost data to achieve financial viability, which I would define going in as collecting annual billing receivable amounts at or in excess of 60% of annual EMS operating costs. So this year you have 585,000, I think, or last year you had 585. You had billables that were just about half of that, and then the rest of it was money that came in. So 60% going to 70%, whatever it could maximize to, the committee would be helping or advising as to ways that could possibly be done.
Okay.
for lack of a better term. You also put in here something that I haven't seen before. The committee may also recommend for or against expansion of service areas to other communities, facilities, or EMS services. I only changed the word will to may because some of the towns may not want to sit on the committee. Under membership, I left it blank, but I think we had talked about 3 was not enough, and 5 and 7 maybe too many.
I think we had settled on 5.
Five.
Yeah. So, and I changed it around, Mike, so that the first membership item is in fact that committee. The BOS will appoint 5 at-large members to the committee serving alternating 3-year terms so that 1 member is appointed each consecutive year. The Board of Selectmen appointees are the voting members. And then the other one is the ex officio members, as you said, were the fire chief, the EMS captain, deputy chief, Littleton town manager, the Littleton regional healthcare and medical director, and may also include representatives from each community served by Littleton Fire Rescue. I added one more section in here, and I feel very strongly about this for 2 reasons. If you're going to have people joining every year, is the implication that this would become a permanent committee?
That was kind of, it wasn't, it was kind of one of those things, these were just some recommendations that I threw down to have a discussion with you guys about.
I think eventually, Milt, we were hoping to sunset
Well,
this committee.
Yeah, I would make a recommendation to sunset this committee at 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is, for 2 reasons. Number one, no other department in the town has a committee, external community committee advising it. And secondly, this is a unionized operation, and the union contract calls for wages, benefits, wages, hours, and working conditions. A permanent committee could start to drift into one of those areas, and before you'd know it, you'd be down in Boston at a federal labor hearing. So to avoid any sort of getting into areas that you really shouldn't get into because you're under contract, I would recommend that we sunset, there'd be a sunset component.
So you take out the alternating, appoint 5 people for a 3-year term, it sunsets in 3 years.
Yeah, I think that may be better, and that way it's, and then if for some reason it should go for 1 more year or 1 less year, you could make that decision.
So you're talking about 5 people, including the fire chief, captain.
But the fire chief, the captain, the town manager and all that, we wouldn't be voting members.
Right.
Yeah.
We're ex officio, we're there to provide information and data. These 5 would be free as appointed citizens, business papers or whatever, to give you whatever opinions they are. So it's not like they can be voted out by town manager or the fire chief taking a position, on there. And right now we have a contract with, I know I'm gonna get the name wrong, Easton and Sugar Hill. So if the community was involved with about them having a voice at the table, but the object here was having these 5 folks not to be restrained from giving you recommendations and opinion on the service.
Right.
And it's a wide range.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they should be taxpayers.
Well, you guys should determine whether taxpayers or business, whoever you believe would be best fit, and giving you 5 individuals that'd be willing to maybe serve at least a 3-year term starting out. That's what the intent would be.
We do have a good group
Yeah.
that have stepped forward,
Yes,
and I
yeah.
think it's a good mix. In fact, Scott's one of them.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.
This is
Yeah,
good.
thank you, Chief.
Excuse me. And Milton, don't we used to have a committee for this particular job, and you guys take them out from the town? You remember? You had 3 guys, and we used to go around, find out what they need and stuff like that.
I don't
That's
remember
when you were a salesman.
I don't remember that,
See,
but maybe so. I would assume that was Craig, the kid. I just don't remember. There were 3 people that,
Yeah,
So-
we used to go around when they need something,
Hmm.
and you guys should take them out.
we kicked them out.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Oh.
And now you want it back, right?
No, this is very
This is different.
specific, just to the ambulance service because of the cost. To have people, business people, whoever that's interested, work with the committee to increase the revenues and reduce or stabilize the costs. And that's really what it's about. Again, there's 28 towns around New Hampshire that have this model with the type of staffing they're looking to do. There are 289 districts in New Hampshire that have fire and EMS services, but some of them are private ambulance services that they contract with. So there's quite a few that have it, but we've never had this before, so this is why we're looking for, some input.
There was a commission, Rudy, that was put together.
See,
There was a commission that was put together, but then, once the commission decided that we would do the in-house EMS, that was not really dissolved, but kind of,
It served its role.
it served its role. So maybe that's what you're thinking of?
yeah, it was me, it was John, whatever name is, but we were three guys that when they requested something, we used to go say, let's just say, that they want a new truck, right? We used to go over there, right?
Right.
We make a report and we used to bring it to the selectmen.
Yeah. This is very specific. There's one particular area that we're looking at.
That's all right.
John?
Yeah, John Goodrich. First of all, thanks for entertaining the notion to study this. I might be the most at fault for having this be more of a topic than it has been in the past, as my work on the budget committee and recommendations, we said go with the current system for this year. And the reason we said that, my concern about this whole thing is maybe different than what Milt's proposed and the guidelines on how to do that, but my concern with trying to do something last minute in a very rushed way would not be effective and would be a disservice to everybody who's involved. And at my outset, I want to say right away, my concern is not, I don't have any animosity towards anybody working in these positions. I think those of you who do emergency services and are out there in the public, sometimes in dangerous situations, all deserve our support. So I'd like to say that and get it on the table right away. On the other hand, as a taxpayer, and I've seen different situations, I'm very concerned that an in-house service can become very expensive, and it can evolve over time into a very expensive proposition all around. I think the history of collecting for services isn't that good, and Milt's right to put that on the table as something that needs to be considered, how to generate revenues. However, I think the results of that have been proven time and time again, so it's not that good. I think if you look at our area, we're an older than average population, and relatively speaking, on a statewide basis, we're less densely populated than other areas. Those two things work against an effectively run ambulance service. It's very difficult to make a profit in an ambulance service, and I don't think that would be our goal, but I do think we want the service somehow in town. My desire is to have a service that's as cost effective as possible. I personally don't think we need 3 years to study it. I'll just put that out there too. I think it can be done a lot quicker than that. There's a lot of good data. There's a lot of good, very knowledgeable people too, who can bring a lot to the table on that. I'm willing to do it, to study the proposition, but I'm not willing to serve 3 years and do it.
We've got you on the list, John.
Yeah.
We do have you on the list. But once the group gets together too, you can decide at that point as far as, maybe it makes sense for 3 years, maybe it only makes sense for a year. And I think, but we have to get the group together first. And then you decide, when are you going to meet?
This was just a framework.
Yes.
And you're right. I mean, I think the real issue is the number of people. So if they narrowed it down to 5, once that committee gets together and works with the chief and what have you, if you're done in a year with a recommendation, you know,
Yeah, and I have my points of view for sure. On the other hand, I think it's good to have a mix of views to try to arrive at, let's maybe say, some innovation and ways to do it in a better way.
Good, well, thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you very much. So,
Excuse me,
next,
hey Milton, I remember what it was. Capital Improvement Program, you remember?
No.
Do you not remember the capital improvement? It was a committee.
I don't think I was on the board then. I'm just not, I'm drawing a blank, Rudy, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Could be my
Then,
head.
then it's good that you're retired.
I agree.
alrighty.
We got a lot.
So with this, I mean, we keep talking about the groups and the names and what do we do, what do we need to do to get this off the ground? And
well, one way to do it would be is if each of you would submit name or names, we can come up with a list.
okay,
And then if that list equals 5, bring it to a meeting and that could be it. If there's different people on there, say you get 8 or what have you, you decide and discuss and figure out. But the first is to kind of get people to
Okay.
apply, or for you all to provide names, you know, so that
Above and
possibly
beyond
on the
what we
meeting
already-
on the 14th or the 28th.
yeah, cause we've already got,
Yeah.
we already have our group.
Then
Okay.
it would be put those formal names out then, so you could formally appoint them or adopt them at the next meeting.
Okay,
Yeah, that's fine. I
All
think
right.
that's fine.
alright, then they can start meeting.
And these people have agreed to do this.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have one quick question just to ask for clarification, because a couple things have come up. When we first initially talked about this, we talked about moving forward with the ambulance and looking at viability of expansion of services and stuff like that for other communities and stuff after the vote was taken to make it a permanent part of the fire department. Are we now looking at the viability of the program together again? Is that what the mission of this committee is? Or are we looking at the financial viability as we look at the other aspects of the service of transfers versus transports and 911 calls?
I didn't bring the minutes with me, but the motion that we made back in April was to accept the service operation and to have a group work with the staff to enhance the revenue, stabilize, you know.
Okay,
And that's really what it was.
thank you. I just wanted clarification.
I didn't bring that.
I've got it here
Because
somewhere.
Chief, you do want to include other towns if possible, and if you expand into the transports, which,
Yeah.
again,
Right now, I have had conversations with other communities that are considering other alternatives.
okay,
I haven't moved anything forward with them just because I've been waiting for a formation of the committee and stuff before. And it wouldn't be anything that's gonna happen soon, I wouldn't think anyway. It would be, if you will, the next budget cycle for the area communities. But it is, regionalization is something that is being discussed and that we're talking about. So
okay,
I have had those conversations, it's just not at a point to bring anything forward at this point.
okay, good, thank you.
So, Chief, one of the things that is on my mind with this is we service Easton at how much money per year?
Roughly off the top of my head, I wanna say it's about $20,000.
That's what they pay us
Correct.
to service them. Sugar Hill,
They're a little over $30,000 a year.
okay. So they're getting complete ambulance service for $30,000 a year. And we set aside $555,000.
Correct.
They're getting a deal.
Their call volume is different than ours, and there are some things that need to be worked out. I will not say that what we're charging is a perfect system. They kind of know that there are changes coming with that. And I don't know what that comes out to be, but the way it kind of comes out right now is a general, if you will, cost for service is about $500 a call is what is being billed. And I can't tell you whether or not that's a good number or a bad number. I can just tell you that that's the current rate that we're at. And we'll probably, my hope is this summer to revisit that as a group and kind of discuss that to figure out what the appropriate rate is going to be.
Because one of the things I'm concerned with is every time that we send the ambulance to Sugar Hill, we call in 2 more guys to man the station. That has to be figured into the equation on what it costs us to
Correct.
outsource.
Yep.
because my concern is, a couple years ago, we got convinced to put on 2 more firefighters and, ambulance
Yep.
to cut down on the overtime. The last 2 weeks is almost, $7,500, almost $7,600 in overtime.
I do have an employee that's been out the last 6 weeks
Excuse me.
with a leg injury.
So, that's where we're getting overtime. I mean, one of the firefighters, 53 hours in the 2-week pay period of overtime. So the 2 men that we put on don't seem to be working for cutting down the overtime.
They cut down on an overtime because they're working a 48-hour work week to keep them from being at a 56-hour work week. They fill in on Kelly days.
Yeah, so the exact number is what, $7,589.98 in a 2-week pay period. Total fire department overtime hours is 226 and a half on a 2-week pay period. That concerns me.
Okay.
Somehow we gotta get a handle on it to help out what it costs us to run this department.
Do you understand the work schedule that the firefighters work? I've been,
12-hour shifts, right? 24-hour shifts?
correct.
Okay.
And where I'm going with this is that we've had this discussion and I've offered to sit down with you because I want to go through it with you. It's the way the schedule works and the way that they're on the shift. Keeping them at 48 hours versus 42 hours versus 56 hours. I believe that's where the 2 people that got hired come into play, to keep them at 48 hours and to avoid having any overtime and cover every day of the week. It does not cover for injuries, sick time, or any other PTO that occurs. I do have some hours during the day that those hours do get covered, but overnight with the minimum manning that we have of 3 people being on duty, there's 3 people on each shift and that needs to be covered each time. So there is a savings that's in there, but it's not reflected in the current numbers we have because that's not where that savings is. My basis for that is gonna be on, before I was here, I believe those were those numbers, that's where that savings came from. I could be wrong, but that's what I'm going off of, because that was in place before I arrived.
Before you got, right.
Yep.
I mean, they came to us with pie charts and everything showing us that these 2 other officers would take care of the overtime, and a week and a half into it, I thought to myself, well, after 2 years that they've been on full-time, they get 5 weeks paid vacation.
Correct.
We'll be right back in the same boat. We're not even to the 2 years yet.
There is a misnomer that hiring more staff will reduce overtime. Or I should say eliminate overtime. Hiring more staff will reduce overtime to, if you will, build up the shifts to allow for that time off. It never truly eliminates the overtime altogether because like you said, that first year they don't get any time off, but eventually they will build the accrual time and they will have time off. So that overtime will always be there. But and it's one of those things that comes down to a cost savings of spending the money for, if you will, the benefits and the retirement and everything that goes with it, or paying an overtime rate to cover somebody. And those cost differences, sometimes I think it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like sometimes it's cheaper to go with the overtime, but it actually requires people to work a lot more hours as opposed to hiring the staff that would reduce that overtime. But that's always a discussion to have during the, if you will, the budget, budget season and looking at the numbers and everything else. So I do appreciate where you're coming from with that, and I can get you more numbers on that for you to actually look at, to be able to see how that works itself out and where we actually sit with that.
So I'd like to see the numbers on the last 2-week pay period for the overtime and see how it got occurred.
I can do that.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Not wrong.
Roger, if I may, we talked a little bit about the expense to Easton and the expense to Sugar Hill and the expense to Littleton. I think you gave a number, $580,000.
555.
555, thank you. What's the revenue for Easton in the EMS system? Easton and Sugar Hill have no revenue. They strictly contract. Our revenue is about $280,000. So if you want to look at it as a fair comparison, as the expense may be $550, but we are able to recoup currently about $280,000. So that reduces the overall expenditure. So it's not really a $500,000, but more like $250,000.
So it's 280,000 in revenue out of the
That-
880,000 that you build out.
That the town of Littleton receives, correct. I don't have whatever we build out, I'll take you that number is accurate, but. And yeah, we can bill out whatever we want. We could bill out a lot less and lose a lot less, but we won't make 280, we'll make 180 or 160 because of the wacky way that healthcare finance works.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, so the next order of business is public comments. Any public comments, Rudy? Do you have public comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me? I can't hear you. First of all, I wanna comment about the fire chief over there, right, as much respect I got for two entities over here, which is a police station and fire chief. Every time we come to a meeting, it seems like you got some problem, with the selectmen, okay? When you come up with an idea, how much you
We're
would
gonna
have.
try to keep it between the guidelines.
Okay.
All right, so
Okay.
it should be.
Do we send you a budgeting to the selectmen and say how much it would have cost to do this, to do that? That's what I wanna ask. If we send, projects,
I don't think we really wanna get into that anymore
you don't wanna get
tonight.
into that. What do you wanna get? I tell you what you wanna get. First of all, it's probably you heard the voice about, because I've been doing a campaign to boycott the meeting, the town meeting, March 8th, because people, they cannot afford to pay this kind of money, $3.57 for 1,000. This is not New York, this is Littleton. And I've been doing the campaign to boycott the election, and I will do that very hard. You guys don't care, that's fine. If that's the way you guys are gonna work, to the people in Littleton, because you don't care, this is something, eventually is gonna come up. Or vote no to all the warrant articles. And I'm gonna work very hard this 8 days, that they are left. If you guys communicate with people and explain why the tax is so much, for what reason, you guys are, in really big trouble. You are in really big trouble, because you guys got an obligation to talk with the taxpayer, which I sent to you too, I sent an email, that everything that you guys spent, okay, is gonna be approved by us, because we pay for everything, the taxpayer. We pay for everything. You guys do everything, and then you got a gentleman over there, he's gonna bring you an audit for 3 years ago. Who cares about that? This is money that you guys spent. You want the audit today. How much money you need in town? And I'm gonna work very hard, I tell you right now, I'm gonna work very hard to boycott the election or vote no to all the warrant articles. Because you guys not cooperated at all, zero,
So
with
we
the
need
taxpayer.
the legislative body, which are the
Okay, okay.
voters, do have the right to vote
To vote.
however they want to vote. You're exactly right.
But I can tell other people how to vote now.
And it's ultimately, it's up to the legislative body, it's up to the taxpayers. You're
That's
exact-
right.
You're
You're right.
exactly right.
You're right.
Yeah, so we have the authority to vet things out, but ultimately it's the taxpayers that make the decisions.
Yeah, right. You're right, 100%.
So I think we're on the same page.
We are on the same page.
Mhm.
If you can tell us where you spend this $10 million that you have budgeted this year.
Okay, so I think Jim did an
I
excellent,
mean, you
I
know,
think Jim did
with
an
all
ex-
respect for Jimmy, you know.
I think Jim did an excellent job at the deliberative session and the bond and budget hearing. He very much, any taxpayer can find out anything. They've got an open door to Jim, the office, open door for us as far as why. And we already told you, Rudy,
You
that
guys should know reason.
that there are 3 things this year that we have absolutely no control over, none. So, you know, we're working, I mean, I don't have to tell you this, but we're doing the best we can to keep it as low as we can. But unfortunately, it doesn't always happen that way. So, I mean, we could tell the guys that are on the New Hampshire retirement system, sorry, we're not paying the 14% increase this year. I don't think that'd fly.
If you don't have the money, how the hell are you gonna pay?
So anyways,
Okay.
it's available, the legislative body, the taxpayers can go online and see where the money is going or what it's been allocated for.
So whatever I send you about everything that you spend, you, the town manager, and everybody else, it's right in the letter that I sent you as an email. Also I sent to him, I don't know nothing about it, not just to me, nobody knows nothing about it.
So Rudy, do you have anything else as far as public comments? No.
I would just
All
tell you that if this is gonna happen, and you guys, you know.
So, and speaking of that too, we do want to remind everybody that town meeting day, voting day is March 8th, which is a week from tomorrow. So we hope, you know, that we have a good turnout, for sure. So thank you, Rudy, for that. Anybody else as far as public comments? Okay, all right, so you gonna say anything?
No, I should be good.
All right.
Thank you.
So we, the final order of business before we go into non-public is the DTLA. It's for DirecTV tax abatement settlement.
Yes, the background on that, DirecTV has been disputing their tax valuation and billing since 2009 with the town. And they filed cases for 2009, 2019, in addition to 2020 and 2021. There's a settlement where the town would agree to a lower valuation for DirecTV for the years of 2022 to 2028. It's lower than what our assessors have them, but it's higher than what DirecTV was asking for. And then the other portion of the settlement is, which comes out of your overlay, still has to be budgeted for, is structured payments for a total of $900,000 from 2022 to 2028, with payment of $300,000 on May 31st, and then $87,714 thereafter for 23 till 28, in order to prevent the case going further into litigation, into court. And the guess of that is no city attorney or town attorney can tell you that they have a 100% ironclad case. And sometimes in settlement you look for certainty on both sides, and I think the downside would be the risk of losing this case and exposing the town to substantially higher payment than what's being mediated.
So you're looking for a motion to...
Motion to approve the
Okay.
agreement as presented.
Okay.
I'll make that motion. I second the motion.
Okay, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And do you want us to, where it is approved, sign this last page?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we all have to sign that.
I'll scan scan and get that over to the attorneys tomorrow then.
Okay, on the, top part, I know the name part is okay, but by, what would that be?
Board of
for?
Selectmen.
Oh, for, just to put selectmen in there?
Yes.
Hey,
It's
I got
Board
my
of
copy.
Selectmen, but see what I'm saying? So by, is it a
Oh.
repeat of names?
Yeah, it's almost like you sign and then print your name.
Sorry, okay, all right. And that ends our Board of Selectmen's meeting. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Appreciate your input.